Well, it's draft season, and in Sacramento, that means almost everything. Every year, Kings fans hope that the Kings can get it right. Last couple of years, it's looked all right with Davion Mitchell and Tyrese Halliburton. Now they've got the number 4 pick in the draft. Let's talk more about the NBA draft. Welcome in a guy who's been covering it forever. He is Sports Illustrated's draft insider, Jeremy Woo. Jeremy, how are you, man?
Pretty good. How are you guys doing?
It's a fun time, man,
Yeah.
and it's we're getting to the point, and I'm sure you deal with this as someone who covers it like crazy. It's like smokescreen season too. Like there's just a lot of noise, and it's trying to decipher. All right, what's real and what's not with what teams may be putting out. You're starting to hear like sources say, Jaden Ivey, hey, he could go too. Oh, maybe the Rockets could put together the most explosive backcourt in the NBA with him and Jalen Green. Um, how tough is that for you covering this thing and trying to come up with mock drafts, trying to decipher what's real and what's not?
Yeah, I think as we get closer to the draft, it gets harder. Right now, I think it's kind of everyone's like, the whole NBA is kind of in the same boat where I think teams are trying to figure things out too. Like, so I don't know, when we say smoke screens, like, I don't know how much of it is even intentional. I think it's just, there's a legitimate like absence of certainty right now. And
Mm.
so, I always like when people ask me, people who like don't understand basketball, like ask me to explain like my job and like what I'm doing. It's like this time of year, it's like I feel like I'm like an FBI agent or something. And it's just like, constantly trying to put information together and figure out what's going to happen. And oftentimes find out things people don't want you to know. So, that's always a challenge, but it's fun. This is kind of the fun part, I think.
You mentioned that absence of certainty. That's an amazing way to put it. How challenging has this process been maybe for some of the teams at the top to figure out like which direction they're going? Why do you think there is that absence of certainty at this point?
Yeah. Well, I think, we kind of know, well, at least for the teams at the top, I think this year, at least we kind of know who the top guys are going to be. Obviously the Kings jumping up to 4 was an interesting wrinkle, in how this thing might go down. But the lottery is at least kind of a good place to be right now because it's more, defined as to, who the top guys are going to be. We can like roughly guess, the top 12 or 13 players, but the feedback I've primarily been getting, this week from, people I've spoken with is that we're all kind of in the same boat. And after you get, to 14 or 15 picks, the whole thing makes no sense. Like anyone could go kind of anywhere. So that whole thing is now the tricky part to figure out and kind of has to play itself out over the next few weeks, just because I think, so many people are kind of all over the board, on these guys. It's very like flat draft. Like that's an expression that you'll hear people use. Just like the talent gap is not super wide after a certain point. So you'll see teams, picking for need. You'll see some surprises, I think, where people just, it's easier at some point to just take the guy you want and to try and get cute and trade back or move around if you don't know they're going to be there. So that dynamic is always interesting to monitor as well.
Yeah, because, even just talking about the uncertainty and then hearing from other teams, oh, this guy is going to be the answer to what they need. Do you feel like there is a franchise altering guy in this draft?
Yeah, I think there could be. I mean, so I'm a big, Jabari Smith proponent. I guess is how I put it. Like I spent some time with him. I did a story on him during the season. So I don't know if I'm biased or I just have like I feel like I have good information like about him. But he's an awesome kid. But I think he has a chance to be really really good. And he's the guy who, like, if I had the number 1 pick, I wouldn't think twice about it. Like I'd be really excited about him. There's some difference of opinion over who number 1 should be, but for me, that's someone who I think, can, change a franchise. Maybe not. He doesn't have to be the number 1 option. He doesn't have to be like an MVP candidate to do it, but just like, the energy that he has and the skill set he has, I think is pretty impressive. So like, for me, that's like the prize of the draft, but I do think it's a pretty good draft. And, Jaden Ivey has big upside, Chet Holmgren, big upside, Paulo Banchero, you can argue, big upside too. So like those are all guys who people have different opinions on, all guys, who could be all stars at some point. But maybe there's not, the true number 1 pick level prospect that everybody can just like agree on. But that's, that was kind of the case last year too, and it was a good draft. And there was debate about if it should be Cade or Mobley or Jalen Green, and they all ended up being really good. So sometimes it's just a good problem to have. It's not always a bad thing.
In the first name you mentioned with Jabari Smith, obviously there are so many things that he can do so well, and especially his ability to shoot over people, right? Like where his release is. And I feel like that is something that is so NBA ready for a team. And if that team was going to be Orlando, they could benefit from that. But then other times I always hear that people are like, Jabari's the safe pick. And I don't truly understand why that would be the case if you know what you're going to get in an NBA ready type guy.
Yeah. Well, I don't think safe pick is really a bad thing. At least, if it's the number one pick, it usually helps. I think there's maybe a stigma where maybe it seems like less sexy, to say like, oh, Chet could be this or that. But like, I think, to me, the certainty in what you're getting with Jabari is pretty appealing. And I just think that, people have valid points about, what he has to improve on in terms of, creating his own shot off the dribble and doing all that stuff. But he's such a special jump shooter for a player that age. And if you really, watched Auburn, the situation he was in, they played a certain way and he got the ball in certain places. And so it wasn't like he was always getting to the rim, but, also he was playing, with another big in there a lot of the time, and it wasn't necessarily conducive for him to just like rip through and drive. So like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff he can add, but like, I look at what he does already have, which is the shot and the intangibles and the great defensive versatility. And then I look at what he doesn't do well yet. And, I see so much room for him to improve at things that, players can improve at. So, it's like, there's nothing else that's really holding him back other than the work to me. And I'm pretty confident he's going to put the work in. So,
yeah, and it sounds like he's going to be the guy at number one. I think it would be a little surprising if he didn't get picked at number one. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, I could see Orlando maybe taking Holmgren. I don't know if that's likely. Like right now, doesn't seem like it's going that way. That could always change. But I think Jabari fits their roster pretty well. And, he's been for me number one all year. So, that's what I would think. But you know how these things go. Sometimes we don't know the whole thing. So.
Yeah, we're all trying to figure out. The Kings are in this very interesting spot at 4, where you're wondering, okay, are they going to be in a situation where Jaden Ivey's there? And then there's a talk we just hit on at the top where maybe Ivey turns into like a top 3 pick. Like what could that mean for Sacramento and all of that? But with Jaden Ivey, how much do you believe that he could be a top 3 pick? Do you think there is a chance he could jump?
Yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, I think it would probably surprise me if Houston took him, just because I don't think he's a great fit with Jalen Green. Just the way that those guys play, like it can kind of work, but like having 2 young scoring guards together historically is not always easy to do. It's hard to like develop them both and have them, operating in the same areas sometimes, and I think it can just get messy. So, could Oklahoma City surprisingly take him? Like, yeah, they could. And, no one really knows exactly what the Thunder are doing. That's like a thing that's true. So it wouldn't like totally shock me if that was like, it wouldn't be like totally out of left field for them to do that and for no one to know about it. But, if that happens, it would be fine for the Kings, because I think they'd probably just grab whichever of the bigs were to fall, whether it would be, Holmgren or Banchero.
Yeah, you bring up OKC, and that's the one that's just always intriguing, because they have 800 draft picks, it seems like, coming up. Presti's so hard to figure out. I've talked myself into, they'll probably go with Chet because of how much Presti, it was reported that he loved Evan Mobley. They were trying to move up to get Mobley, obviously unsuccessful doing that. Well, Chet makes some sense. But then you write a piece today, and there's a lot of noise about Victor. How do you say his last name? Next year's projected top pick. What's his last name?
Wembanyama.
Okay.
Wembanyama.
We're going to have to know that.
Yeah, we're going to have to get that down.
And in your piece, I quickly skimmed through, and you were talking about how like this guy, if he was in this year's draft, would likely be the number 1 pick. I don't know. There's like, for me, I'm like, does OKC just stay bad and try to aim for that guy next year and pick someone else at 2? My whole point is I can't figure out Oklahoma City and what they're trying to do.
Yeah, well, the nice thing for them is that they can kind of take whoever they want. They're probably, I'm pretty sure they're gonna at least take one more year of not being very good. But like, they are in a different circumstance than most teams just because their ownership seems to be patient, and Sam Presti has a ton of job security, so they can they have the advantage of being able to operate a little differently in terms of like the long view, versus some teams where there is pressure, to get out of the basement and make the playoffs and turn it around quickly, right? So they don't have to operate like that. So there's a team that often comes up as like, yeah, they could totally, tank. I mean, I don't know if I would say tank because they haven't been good for a couple of years,
Right.
but also if you think about it, I mean, really, what I'm interested to see is like, say they end up like picking 4th or 5th next year. Well, they could still call the team with the number 1 pick if that's their guy, and they can say, hey, we're going to give you all like 20 of our future firsts, just to move up 4 spots, and they could still get a no because that's how special, Victor seems to be. It's like in my line of work, like I try to avoid being like super hyperbolic when I'm writing about players, just because it doesn't usually help anybody. So I try not to go like overboard, but like a lot of the stuff that I'm hearing back from, from scouts and teams, it's so everyone's so excited about it. So I haven't seen him play in person yet. Hopefully I will go to France next year. I just want to go to France, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and do
helps if
something
it's
you
the work.
love.
Yeah.
Watch some basketball in France. Good idea.
Yeah.
But the other thing with OKC too, because we talk about the patience and everything, but where's the urgency with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, right? Like still young and in his healthier years. Like, don't they want to capitalize on these years with him? And if not, isn't that going to be frustrating for him?
Yeah, I think that is the one dynamic that's a little bit tricky. Like if I were him, I would probably want to, go somewhere feeling like, I'm in the early part of my prime, still really young, but like ready to, contribute to a winning team. What they ultimately do with him will be interesting. Like, I think it's possible he could get traded. Obviously I don't know if that'll happen. But yeah, I mean, the timeline is off enough where, and again, they've historically done a really good job, with Paul George and Westbrook of, getting really good returns on trades for stars. So like, that's definitely, I think, a dynamic that they will have to work with. Yeah. And, for him, if he wants, maybe he will at some point want to go to a contender, but it's all speculation right now. But I think there is something to that.
When you look at this lottery, who are maybe the team or some of the teams that you're most intrigued with, like in terms of what they're going to be doing come draft night?
Yeah, well, definitely, I think Sacramento is interesting at 4, just because with there being duplication with Ivy and De'Aaron Fox, and I think just the fact that they already have kind of demonstrated that they're kind of when they traded Halliburton for Sabonis, they kind of demonstrated that they're trying to have balance, and they are trying to avoid some of that duplication. Whether or not that was actually a problem is fair to debate, but it seems clear like that they're conscious of Fox is going to have to be the guy. What do we put around him? So they could take Ivy and try it. They could go a different direction, but I think that's kind of where the intrigue kind of starts. So could they trade back? Like I think that's kind of a tricky spot. I think there's a lot of curiosity about what Detroit will do, just because they can go so many different directions. Like I think they'd be happy to have Ivy if he's there at 5. I would think they'd take him if he's there, but if he's gone, do they take Keegan Murray? Do they take Shaedon Sharpe? Like Detroit's in an interesting position because with Cade Cunningham being such a versatile guy, it enables you to kind of build your team a lot of different ways. So I think those are 2 teams that I'm pretty curious about.
We've got more with Jeremy Woo coming up, but we should mention that today's podcast presented by our friends over at East Sac Fitness. Yeah. If you're trying to get ripped like Deuce Mason.
Oh.
Trying to look good like Deuce Mason.
Or Morgan.
You go over to East Sac Fitness and get yoked. I mean, they do more than that, by the way. They've got yoga classes.
Yes, they have a recovery room where you
spin classes.
Oh my gosh, they have so many more classes. And not only that, though, Deuce, the recovery room is my favorite part, though. The sauna, the cold plunge pool. I mean, is it just because I like excuses to like sit around and be comfortable and recover? Yes, maybe. But I do also do the weightlifting classes. It's so cool. It's such an intimate setting. If you're looking for a place to go get your health on, to go get your workout on, make sure to check out East Sac Fitness.
Go to their website, eastsacfitness.com. Give them a call at 916-599-3181. That's 916-599-3181. We're also presented today by Joey Reagan over at Lion Real Estate. If you're looking to buy a house in Northern California, you need to hit our guy, Joey. He knows Sacramento. He's helped actually one of our podcast listeners find a house. They moved from New Jersey to Sacramento. They used him.
Yeah, and he's actually connected with others too, because if you're looking to buy or sell your home, Joey not only knows this area so well, but he knows other areas like Rockland, Folsom, Roseville, Sacramento, Carmichael. Anywhere you're looking, Joey can help you out. And he's so easy to talk to. Just text him, call him, whatever's easiest for you. Hit up Joey Reagan today.
Did you say Lincoln? What about Loomis?
Anywhere.
Go to his website, jreagan.golion.com. Jreagan, that's JRAGAN.golion.com. You can also hit him up on his cell phone. Call or text him at 916-412-4592. Also, get your coffee fix on the official coffee roasters of the Deuce and Mo podcast. How about Seasons Coffee Roasters? Go online and order, and they will deliver it straight to your door. We're talking about beans. We're talking about their Bold Crew, a growler of cold brew coffee. It's literally my favorite.
You're addicted.
Go to seasonscoffeeroasters.com. Use promo code DeuceBags. That's promo code DeuceBags. It saves you 10% off. Thanks so much for everyone's support of the Deuce and Mo podcast. Yeah, Sacramento is a very interesting one just because you mentioned it. Like, I think Jaden Ivey's super talented, and you know a lot more about him than I do. I've watched some of his games, and you see the talent, but I'm looking at it from Sacramento's standpoint. It's like they made a decision, and we can, like, agree or disagree with it, but their path is they're trying to end the 16-year playoff drought. Like, can they afford to draft Ivey if the fit is clunky with him and Fox, and then, like, if they miss again – what's that mean for Sabonis? Monty McNair, the GM, is in the final year of his contract coming up here. So I am fascinated by what they do. Like, could they trade down? I think there's probably hope that Ivy jumps up and they don't have to make that decision, and maybe like Chet or Paolo falls to them. And I don't know. I've watched a lot of Banchero, and I really like his game. How do scouts feel about Paolo Banchero?
Yeah, I think people are still pretty excited about him. I just I heard consistently from people, like college people, in the college game, he was such a hard player for them to deal with this season, just because he, can do so many things at a high level in terms of scoring, passing. He's physical. I do think there's probably a little bit of like hold up just because he's not a super athlete. He's more of like a power athlete. Obviously, he's very skilled. He can handle on the perimeter and do a lot of different things. And I think it's exciting that you can use him out of a lot of different spots. He's a great, I'm excited to see if the team will kind of unlock him as a passer. And I think, defensively, he's just okay. Like, there's varying degrees of concern. I don't think it's like a disaster, but he's not going to be a rim protector. So he's a true four is what he is defensively. So there's some limitations there. But, if he puts it all together, and I think he's going to really have to shoot it better. Like, for me, like I saw Duke at the ACC tournament. I was in New York for like 3 days, and I watched Duke, play 3 days in a row. And it was like Paolo had just like his jumper had like disappeared for a week. And then he comes back in the NCAA tournament and he's hitting shots again, and it's fine. But that type of thing scares you a little bit as an observer, just like, just knowing that it's not fully there. Like, you can get there, but it's not consistent. It's enough of a holdup where, again, when you're making a pick at the top of the draft, you're splitting hairs a lot of the time. If you're splitting hairs with him, like the jumper and the defense are two things that are maybe average, you could say, it can be the difference in making a pick like that. But he won't fall very far. Like, I think if he's there, I think Houston will probably take him.
You talk about a holdup. How many teams are nervous about Shaedon Sharpe?
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the fascinating, I guess, case studies, that will come out of this draft. Having, not played in college, obviously at Kentucky, but didn't, only practice, didn't play. People who saw him practice, said he was the best player in the practice. I saw him play last summer at Peach Jam, so I'm not like flying blind with him. But I think there is some concern just not knowing exactly what you're going to get. Like, he's a super athlete, and he's a good shooter. He can create space for himself off the dribble. Like, he has like star elements. But it's just hard to, teams can only go off, the film that they have a lot of the time. And it's harder to make a comfortable projection without that. So for him, it's really going to hinge on, he's going to have to go to these workouts like in market, and he's going to have to, kind of make the pitch for himself, I think. Because the upside is very, very easy to see. But I do think it's a pretty good top 10. Like if you don't take him like at 5 or 6 and he goes to 7 or whatever, like, you'll get someone else who I think you'll be pretty happy with. So, he's going to have to make the case, why he should be the guy that you sort of bank on versus somebody who's maybe a more like well-known and just like easier to evaluate as a, I don't want to say asset, but like as a sort of like, what you're getting.
Yeah. Do you have any players that you think would fit well for Sacramento? Because we talked about Ivy and like, hey, that fit could work. I don't know. Maybe it does. We've seen Ivy play a lot off ball. Maybe that does work. But like, are there guys in this draft that you think could fit well with what Sacramento's trying to do? Like maybe a Keegan Murray. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would expect Keegan Murray to be in the mix for that pick for them. I don't know exactly how he fits with Sabonis. Like, I don't think it's perfect, just because if those are your two forwards, like, neither one of them is really a shot blocker, like in an NBA sense, where you're going to just like park him at the rim. I do think Keegan is a better defender than he gets credit for. He was a very good defender the year before this, but he wasn't playing a lot, but he was, a really good, defensive player for them. Well, when they had Luka Garza and Joe Wieskamp at Iowa. So, I think they'll be somewhere in between, where he's not going to be asked to, score 25 points a game. So he'll be able to play more defense. And, I think there's something to that fit where you just have a guy who kind of fills in the gaps. But I don't think it's perfect. Like, I think Dyson Daniels will be an interesting fit in Sac. I don't know if they would actually take him at 4. Maybe if they move back, he's there.
I like Dyson Daniels.
Yeah.
He's an awesome player. Yeah.
We do G League games for Stockton Kings, and she did some stuff with G League Ignite, and just kind of his growth from the first time I saw him to now, just from his game, and then the stuff at the combine. I mean, it's like
physically
6'7" 3/4. I'm like, he grew almost 2 inches. Like, he does a lot of things well out there.
Yeah, he's super, super well-rounded. I rewatched that game he had against Stockton. It was one of his better games of the year, I think, if I remember. I mean, he's someone who I've been high on, most of the season, and I think everyone's kind of realizing now he's just very, very bankable. Like, doesn't have any glaring holes in his game. He's still young. He can continue to get stronger. He's got really good size. I think he's someone who could play, legitimately, play 4 positions, like both defensively and offensively, which is particularly if you're trying to win in the playoffs, like having someone like that that kind of lets you play matchup chess, I think is super, super hard to find. So I don't know if he's getting fully enough credit for just like how rare he is in that respect. I think the fact that, Josh Giddey is his childhood friend, they took the same pathway more or less out of Australia and the NBA Academy. And so I think the success that Giddey has had as a rookie with Oklahoma City, I think that probably helps Dyson in terms of like teams kind of feel like they know what level player they're getting because those two guys are both really good. So I think that probably is going to give him a bump. So he'll come off the board. I would guess, the first 7 or 8 picks. I don't know exactly where yet, but I think that's someone who, if I were Sacramento, I would at least think about at number 4.
Yeah.
And we talk about the fit for Sacramento, and obviously we can mention someone like Chet Holmgren, and you think about what he could do even in transition, hit that transition 3, trailing De'Aaron Fox. And, there's so many other things.
Defensively.
Yeah, just being long, having more length, and what the Kings need to achieve defensively this next season. If the Kings really want him, should they be looking to trade up, or is that something where it's like you take the risk and you hope that he falls?
Yeah, I mean, like, my guess would be they probably have to get to number 2 to do it. Okay. So like, maybe they call Oklahoma City and try to go up to 2. I don't know. Obviously it's hard to know exactly how they'd evaluate that, but it's probably unlikely that he's there at 4. I mean, if he is there, I'm pretty sure they'd take him. Like, that'd be a great fit for them. But yeah, I mean, right now I think people assume, he'll be gone by number 1 or number 2. So.
Yeah, I'm curious too, from the people you've talked to, how much of a concern, I mean, it can't be that big of a concern if he's going to be maybe a top 2 pick, but just his frame. I know a lot of people bring that up. You could see maybe at times it's an issue, but I think he did a good job even against some tougher matchups in college basketball last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's valid. Like I think relative to other people, I have not been as much of like a Holmgren fan as others have. It does concern me to an extent. Like I think it's not like it's going to make him bust or anything, but I just think that there are limitations at with that body type, and also I guess the health concerns of any mobile 7-footer. I mean, guys who are big and have to move around a lot and they have lower body injuries a lot. It's kind of the precedent. So obviously he's had a clean bill of health, but you always worry about that more. It's more about that more so than like him being skinny. I just think at that size, it's hard to play, at that size, but or weight, I should say. But it's interesting. Like you look at Victor Wembanyama, who just bring him back up. Like he's also really skinny, but he's still 240 pounds.
Wow.
Right. And
Is
Chet,
he really?
so he's listed at 7'3", 240, right? So he's got some heft. But Chet is listed at 190. So it's like a big difference. So you really have to think about, puts it in perspective, like how you can use him. I think defensively, there's a pretty good chance he's going to help you. And he's tough and he's got some, things to like in terms of what, his competitiveness. Like everyone generally is, praises Chet with the way he approaches it, which is great. I think offensively, it's kind of ironic, and I've said this before. He was billed as like a 7-foot guard, but I'm pretty sure that's not what he's going to be, just because the functionality of his handle in the half court. He doesn't have an incredible foot speed. It's not like he's going to like blow by people off the dribble, right? So, he'll probably wind up being used more like a Porzingis, he can still be very dangerous doing that, but I think he profiles as more of a true big. And I think that's something that can work for him, in spite of the frame, but I think it's going to be hard for him to like bang, on the interior, offensive rebounding might be difficult, jockeying for position. I mean, it's going to be a constant battle for him. And I do think also, coming into the league, being, top pick like that, I think guys are going to target him a little bit too, early on, and test him. So it's going to be a tough adjustment for him, I think. But just in terms of like basketball talent, I mean, he's got it. Like, not many 7-footers like have the skill set that he has.
So you were at the combine. What players benefited most from being there?
Yeah, it's tough to say. Like this year, it wasn't like 2021 where we came away like kind of knowing, guys had like for sure played their way into the first round. But I think, the name that came up the most was Jalen Williams from Santa Clara.
Yeah.
He did have a really good week. He looked good in the games. Someone teams have kind of come around on. I think now, pretty good chance he goes in the first round. I think he was one of the big winners. Jaquavion Smith played well there, but he's going back to NC State, which I think ultimately is probably a good call for him. But it wasn't one of those years where like the combine just like skyrocketed anyone's stock. And again, also part of it is a lot of the guys didn't play. Like a lot of guys who I think will probably go 25 to 40 chose not to play, which sometimes hurts you, sometimes doesn't. Another guy is Michael Foster from G League Ignite, who he showed up 14 or 15 pounds lighter than his playing weight during the season, which I think really impressed people. Just his commitment to his body, and it kind of unlocked his mobility a little bit, both defensively and with the ball in his hands. So I think he definitely helped himself. I think like drastic changes like that, when you show up and you just show what you've been doing for 2 or 3 months, I think can help.
Yeah, another guy. I liked him when I saw him early on, but you could see where like, okay, he needs to drop some pounds. He did that. The other guy on G League Ignite, Jaden Hardy, came in with like a lot of hype. Didn't have the best shooting year with the G League Ignite. I know he did some workouts with. I think that was like an agency stuff. Is he more of a second round guy at this point?
I think he can definitely still go in the first. I mean, it's kind of like I said earlier. I think after like the 14 or 15 picks, like it could really go any which way, and it wouldn't totally shock me. Like I think Jaden is one of those guys who like, he could be the 18th or 19th pick, or he could be the 35th pick, and it wouldn't like totally be crazy. And there's, probably 5 to 10 guys like that in this draft who have that wide of a range, just because, how hard it can be to separate. But, I think Jaden, like he played better towards the end of the season. I had the chance to see him play in high school, and he was pretty impressive. This is before the pandemic, but I was always impressed by his scoring ability and his shooting then. So I still think there's a little bit of upside there. He's got to learn to be more efficient. Got to continue working on the shot selection, but I do think Ignite was probably a good, just developmentally probably helped him, even if his stock, isn't what it was.
Right.
Like sometimes it's more about, the long-term progression than anything else.
So I know you had your initial mock draft after a lottery. Do you have to do more coming up here? Like when's the next one drop for you?
Probably next week, I think.
Cool.
I was waiting, I try to wait till after the deadline, like the NCAA deadline, before I do it again. And, then as I get closer to the draft, I'm always updating it. So it ends up being something I do like 5 or 6 more. I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but it's interesting. It's like putting a puzzle together.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I mean, it's probably hard to even say, but how long does it take you to do like one of them? I mean, I guess once one's done, it's all about tinkering and finding out new information, intel, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always kind of thinking about it.
Yeah.
So like by the time I actually sit down and write it, like I kind of have it mapped out. And then at some point you're just making minor changes. But like I think the best way to do it is, you start at the top and you kind of work down. And so sometimes that can be easy. Like if you kind of have a sense of what the top is going to look like. So, this year you can get to a point. But then after that, it is very much, conjecture, and it's influenced by, how good I think guys are too. Like when I have the absence of, I don't know exactly how a team feels, but I can go off what I would do. Right.
Sure.
But that's only accurate some of the time. So it can take a really long time. The night before the draft, I historically have not slept much, but it can totally depend.
Jeremy's already thinking of the 2023 draft, and then I just like hearing him. It's like he dreams about it every night.
You got Victor Scoot,
Yes.
Scoot Henderson.
Oh, yes.
Scoot looks nice. I like Scoot Henderson. One last one for you, because now you brought up your mock draft. You don't sleep the night before. So when draft night happens, do you like after the draft, do you compare your mock draft, and are you like mad at yourself if you miss something? Are you really happy if you get something right? Like, how do you feel after a draft?
Usually relieved. I wouldn't say I don't obsess too mumuch over like trying to get every pick right. Obviously it's nice if you do. I care more about like when I'm doing it, I want to have like a coherent like flow of information where, even if I didn't get the pick right, it's like, if you read like in the blurb and it has some sense of like what's going to happen, to me, it's like, I don't have to necessarily get, nail the pick on the head, because there's just some things you're not going to know. And one thing that's wrong will throw off the whole chain. But, as long as I'm kind of in the ballpark of like what might happen and what people are thinking, to me, that's usually my goal, because I just want people to read it and like, have an understanding of what's going on behind the scenes. So, and then, I always will write something the day after the draft, like wrapping it up. And then I just try to like put it away for a while. Like I don't go back to worry too much, but there are times where I get annoyed, like forgetting things wrong, but I try to not stew on it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we appreciate you taking the time during this busy time to chat with us. I encourage all of our listeners to read Jeremy's work at si.com. Follow him on Twitter. You have great stuff. Love reading you over the years. So thanks so much for the time, man.
Yeah, much appreciated. Thank you.
It's the one and only Jeremy Woo.